It happened. So,
I love it. Well, of course, we're all familiar with the two movies, the two heavy metal movies. The first one, I believe, is 1981,
Yes.
which is before you came along. But the second one came out in 2000, which is long after you were there.
Yeah.
How involved were you in the decision to make a sequel?
Very much so. I mean, up to the point that when I bought the magazine in 1991, I started calling Columbia TriStar and told them, first I had to convince them that they actually owned heavy metal, the movie, and then they figured out they did, and the music rights were messed up, and so I helped them clear the rights. It took me basically 5 years of working with them to release it. And so in 1996 I released it. It was the 10th best-selling VHS of all of 1996, sold 2 million copies, and then Columbia said, well, we want to make another movie, and I had the rights, all full ownership of the rights had reverted back to me at that time. So I shopped it around a little bit, and then Columbia came up with the best offer, and I partnered with a company in Canada called Citigroup, and it's for this negative pickup deal with Columbia, and we brought in a German company, and then that's when things sort of spiraled out of control in the sense that, although we had a great relationship with the Canadians when we started, to do Canadian content, they has to have Canadian writers, Canadian directors, Canadian stuff, and they said, look, we know we have to do all this to the grants, but you will still have full say and full approval over what's done with the movie. And that happened up until the first time, about the first 2 weeks of production, where I said, you can't do that because that's not heavy metal. And they said, well, we have all the rights, so we're going to do what we want anyway. So then the movie became what they thought should be heavy metal as opposed to what I thought should be heavy metal. And I think, unfortunately, the movie ended up sucking really badly. And it took us, almost 10 years since that came out to sort of rebuild the heavy metal foundation and bring in someone like David Fincher to now do a heavy metal movie, hopefully the way it should have been done back then. So we'll see.
So there is talk about a Heavy Metal 3 then?
Oh, David Fincher is executive producing. Blur, B-L-U-R, Blur Animation Studios at Venice is going to do all the animation. Sony's doing we have a $50 million budget. We're doing a full-blown, production. Fincher's directing one. Guillermo Toro wants to direct one. Zack Snyder wants to direct one. Gore, Verbinkski wants to direct one. It's going to be an anthology picture again, so it's a pretty impressive lineup, and
That's extremely exciting. That's good news.
Hey, breaking news.
Breaking news. Has this been out in the wild yet?
Yeah, Paramount. We originally signed a deal with Paramount to develop it in January of this year, and there was a full press release in Variety, and we developed it for Paramount for about 4 months and finished basically all the basic development. And it was time for then Paramount to make a decision, and they were at odds with Fincher over one of his other projects, this movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, that they wanted him to reduce the running time and blah blah blah. And so they said, well, until you sort of step up to what we want you to do with Benjamin, then we're not going to greenlight any other movies. And David said, well, fine, fuck you, I'm going to set heavy metal up somewhere else. And so we jumped over to Sony, and he set it up there, and so we're just sort of pulling together the rest of our issues, and we'll be in production this fall. So.
That's fantastic. So do you have a release date or anything like that? 2010.
They're saying August 2010, but that's 2 years away, and we'll see where we end up by then. Hopefully it'll be around then. So.
Might have to postpone my wedding if that's the case.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Again, I'm talking with Kevin Eastman, the owner of Heavy Metal Magazine. Look for Heavy Metal 3 coming out in 2010.